With the Kering financial report, we should probably just go straight into it because there's a lot to talk about. Like, there's a lot of stuff to go through, to be honest. Anyway, jumping straight into it, let's talk about Kering's financial performance. What I'm gonna do first is I'm going to go through the presentation, kind of give an overview of what was said, and then we'll look at the report after. But to kind of give you a summary on what happened, Gucci sales were down 24% in the fourth quarter, which basically is kind of what we expected. It kind of just underlines a steep decline throughout the whole of last year when it came to the likes of Gucci. Of course, Gucci being the most important brand in Kering's stable, when Gucci falls 24% in the last quarter, it meant that there was a 12% decline in sales from Kering. Now, it could have been worse, but a lot of that was actually offset by Bottega Veneta doing quite well, and Bottega was one of the bright sparks in the Kering stable compared to a lot of the other brands, to be honest. And there were so many products that sold via Bottega, especially the intrecciato bags. Those were really, really good commercially. Those did really well. But it's interesting to see, how they plan on fixing the conglomerate, even though we've kind of had a sort of overall luxury slowdown. But anyway, this is the presentation, so I'll just run you through some of the key points that were made during the presentation. So, at the beginning of the presentation, Francois-Henri Pinault was essentially trying to tell people that they are really no longer, looking at short-term decisions, and they're really looking at long-term decisions that will make sure that, the conglomerate moves forward in the long term. So he did warn people that, there could be a lot of issues in the short term, but if people are patient, they will see why you can't really build a sustainable business unless you make long-term decisions, which I found very interesting because that's what I've been saying the whole time. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. They first talked about Gucci. They talked about how they have obviously a plan and they're rolling out certain things. Of course, they have the Blondie bag here. The Blondie bag is a bag that they said has been picking up steam. Of course, they had the campaign. So they've kind of been doing the rollout with that. They have things like the Jackie bag, the luggage that they've also seen has been on an uptick. And then they talked about the heritage products, talked about building their iconic things. Of course, here they have the horsebit loafer. The horsebit loafer is something that, of course, is very, very famous for Gucci and very key for the brand. Let me just change the slide so you can see it. It's very key for the brand. However, they were saying in their presentation that every time that they revamp the horsebit loafer, they always see an uptick in sales of the original. So every season when they do either it was when Sabato was there, they did the horsebits, or they did the ballet flats with the horsebits, or when Alessandro Michele did, the Princeton's slipper and all sorts of things, even a loafer as well. Those did really, really well. So I'm interested to see how many more iterations they think they can push of these horsebit loafers and push that forward. You can even see there, they were making the point that, they're on the mark with the trends, and that's kind of the part of Gucci that I didn't really like. They're talking about how they made their ballet flats with the horsebit that was in line with trends at the time, and that there was demand for it and people really wanted it. However, in my opinion, as a brand as big as Gucci, you're supposed to be setting the trends, not copying what Miu Miu is doing, if that makes sense. So, and when they did it, it kind of seemed a bit too late. It was way too many seasons too late. So they talked about that. They talked about some of their ideas for how exactly they're going to focus on the product strategy. So when it came to Gucci, they talked about the fact that they're continuing to reduce their focus on wholesale and they're going to sell less wholesale, and they are building the infrastructure to sell more direct to consumer and, have better online presence and online sales via their own personal channels. So it'll be interesting to see if that catches on, if they are able to sell that much product direct to consumer, especially with the new price points that these luxury brands are pushing these days. I just find it all a bit insane. So I do find it a bit crazy. So here, of course, you can see the stores this was what they showed when they're essentially discussing how they are really focusing on selling direct to consumer and doing less wholesale. Then they talked about Saint Laurent, how Saint Laurent is also on an uptick. talking about how a lot of the runway shows recently have been held in high esteem, which is very true. They talk about YSL continuing to build a fashion authority in the fashion industry, which I agree. I think that's definitely happening. They talk about the fact that they're giving Saint Laurent a higher repositioning. So they were talking about things like quality, talking about things like the fact that when it comes to YSL, it's all about the materials and it's all about silhouette. Do I believe them? Not really. I need to see the garments for myself. I'm not just going to believe what business people at Kering say that, oh yeah, we're focusing on the top-notch luxury when it comes to YSL. I had to see that for myself. So I'll wait. I'm going to go to the store and then see kind of what they're working on. Of course, they talked about Emilia Perez, which is a YSL funded film. I think this is a car crash of a film. It's an absolute disaster. I've already made a video on it. And I find it really funny that in the presentation, they used the words cultural relevance and audacity. How out of touch could you possibly be? First of all, cultural relevance. Emilia Perez, once again, realistically, is seen as a film that depicts Mexican culture in a very disrespectful way with bad acting, people that don't speak Spanish that sounds Mexican, and then, disaster after the other, scandal after the other. Is that what they mean by audacity? Cultural relevance? Like, it's so out of touch with that part of the presentation. So I did find that really weird. Of course, they talk about Bottega Veneta. Bottega Veneta, once again, has been one of the really big bright sparks for Kering. It's a brand that has seen quite consistent growth, even during the luxury slowdown when all the brands were kind of suffering. All of them were bleeding. We saw the likes of Bottega Veneta still seeing growth. The Andiamo bag is obviously a bag that everyone loves, and it's really seen a lot of uptick, especially in 2024. They talk about, the craftsmanship, the goods desirability, the fact that Bottega Veneta has this ultra high-end positioning founded on its DNA. So this is something that they want to continue pushing forward as Bottega moves forward. They also talked about the fact that they launched fragrances and, they're working on Kering Beauty, which was the Kering Beauty part was later on in the presentation. I found it quite interesting, actually, but we'll get there eventually. They also talked about, of course, the hiring of the new creative director, Luis Trotta, who is about to have a debut not too long from now. And then they also talk about highlights from some of the other fashion houses. Of course, Balenciaga being the brand that has the most relevant runway and couture shows. Of course, they brought things back like the Rodeo bag that's seen success. Not the Rodeo bag, sorry. They brought back the City bag that has seen a lot of success. But the Rodeo bag obviously has a lot of success too. And they launched the New York City store downtown that has seen some really good stuff. They talk about McQueen, how Sean McGear's second show saw a lot of uptick. A lot of critics really weren't as bad about it compared to his first show. They talk about Brioni, the fact that Brioni has really been seen now as like a brand that men are really buying and really interested in. Of course, they talk about Boucheron. They talk about all the other brands that they own and all the other companies. I'm not going to get into that because it's a lot. Then they talk about their project strategy. I've kind of touched on it. Moving forward, they're going to do less wholesale, more direct to consumer. They're focusing a lot more on experiences with a lot of their things, and they're also focusing a lot on Kering. So here you can see on the right-hand side here, what I'm highlighting, wholesale downsizing. You can see they've mentioned that here, and they've talked about the store network that they're building, which will allow them to make sure that they can actually stay on top of selling direct to consumers and do that in big numbers, essentially. So here they kind of just talk about Gucci's distribution priorities, because of course Gucci is the top brand. So full price stores, they talk about it here. They talk about outlets, what they're doing online, redirection of e-concessions and business to Gucci.com. And then they talk about wholesale, reduction of doors. And they're saying that in 25, the revenue from wholesale is going to be down by 30%. Interesting. Let's see if this actually works, because I find it strange when you're losing that much money that you're removing wholesale and, kind of restricting the consumers that have access to these things unless they're buying things online, which doesn't really add to the luxury experience. So I think there's an issue with that. Fundamentally. Yeah, here they're talking about the client experience. Of course, they're talking about excellence in execution and quality. I don't really trust any of these brands when they talk about quality and all that sort of stuff. See, look here, they're talking about, operations and corporate being their main priorities. Not really the biggest supporter. This was interesting. Really big focus on Kering eyewear. The fact that they launched a lot of the Kering brand's eyewear in 2015 and they've been on a 10-year journey building it. They've built like a complete brand portfolio and they're continuing to grow. Also, the fact that Kering eyewear brought close to 1.6 billion euros in revenue. They have distribution in 150 countries. They are also number 2 in the eyewear industry, which is quite impressive, and number 1 in the luxury eyewear segment. So as far as their eyewear side of the business, it's doing really well. And it's something that, of course, they want to focus on a lot more moving forward, which definitely understandable. This is the part that interested me because obviously me being a fragrance fan, I did touch on Kering Beauty not too long ago for you guys that follow the streams, but they've mentioned once again with the launch of Kering Beauty in 2023, which I've already said is very late. It talks about the fact that they started launching fragrances with a lot of their brands, Bottega Veneta, Balenciaga and McQueen. They acquired Creed in October 2023. In May 2024, they launched Bottega Veneta's exclusive candles. In October 2024, they launched Bottega Veneta's high-end fragrances. And in 2025, they are planning the launch of Balenciaga's high-end fragrances and really rolling out the Balenciaga fragrances. I think all of that is a good idea. I just think it's so late. I don't know why it took them this long to do that. And I will always maintain that understanding because really, really late. Really late. Even McQueen, they need to work on a fragrance. So most of their brands, to be honest, that's just the case. So they talk about their roadmap with Kering Beauty, the fact that they want to grow and leverage Creed as a platform. That's quite funny because I think Creed is falling out of favor with people that are into fragrances, if I'm going to be honest. So we'll see about that. We'll see about that. Love the Bottega wobbly bottles. They give me joy. I do like the bottles though. They are really fun. They are really interesting. They have like a really weird shape. And then the wood part as well is really cool. Some of you might not know kind of what they look like. Let me see if I can put it on the screen for you guys. But yeah, I think the problem with the fragrances though, I think the marketing has been a bit lackluster. I think the rollout has been a bit lackluster. What I will say though is that the bottle and the branding is great. I just think the marketing is a bit mid. And I also think that the fragrances aren't the most unique. And so when you have ultra expensive fragrances that aren't really unique smelling, they're not really going to attract like a fragrance audience. So you're trying to attract rich people that already buy Bottega, but are they going to buy Bottega fragrances when they've already been buying MFK or something like that? What would make them change to Bottega, especially if the smells aren't considered to be that interesting? I don't know. So we'll just have to see about that moving forward. But anyway, moving on, once again, they talk about launching first fragrances. They talked about the fact that they had great results of Bottega Veneta's collection of 5 very high-end fragrances. They talk about the Balenciaga exclusive collection and Bottega Veneta extension to launch in 2025. And then they talk about building their portfolio of fragrances and scaling. So they put a leadership team of beauty experts in place for Kering Beauty. They have foundations for all key functional teams and selection of suppliers. And they are building on their roadmap for the coming 4 years. So here they talk about more things on a roadmap. Not going to get into all of that because I don't want to bore all of you. But they talk about also investing with efficiency. They talk about, cash flow and cash flow generation and all these kind of things. And then we have the 2024 results. So in 2024, they had an overall revenue of 17.2 billion euros, which is a lot. They have a net financial debt of 10.5 billion euros. And they employ 47,000 people. And you can see here that overall, they're down 12% from last year. So last year, they made 19.56 billion euros. And this year, they made 17.2 billion euros in revenue. So down 12%, which is a lot. That's a lot of money to be down when these companies, their only goal is to grow every single second. Like they just want to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. So to be down that much, that's huge. That's huge. Yeah, it's 12% for Kering, not for Gucci. Gucci was actually down more than that. So yeah, crazy change, right? Insane change. They talk about some of the markets that, they are the biggest in. Asia, Pacific made up 30% of their market. Japan specifically made up 8%. North America, 24%. Western Europe, 29%. And the rest of the world was 9%. So here you can see, once again, their retail income, their revenue, including e-commerce versus wholesale. So they had 60% wholesale and 24%. Sorry, 76% retail, including e-commerce, and 24% wholesale. So they were saying moving forward, they want to rely less on wholesale, and they want this number for their retail, including e-commerce, to be higher. So they want to sell more direct to consumer because, of course, their profit margins are a lot higher that way. Then, of course, they've divided it by brand. So first you have Gucci. So in 2023, Gucci made 9.87 billion euros in revenue. In 2024, they made 7.650 in revenue. So 7.65 billion euros in revenue. So down by crazy numbers, serious numbers down. It's what we expected though, because we could see the writing on the wall based on the performance of the first 4 quarters. The same is the case with Saint Laurent. Saint Laurent made 3.17 billion euros in 2023. In 2024, they made 2.88 billion euros. So they're down quite a lot. They were down by 7% just in Q4 alone. And then we have Bottega Veneta, the only seemingly one of the few bright sparks of Kering, especially when it comes to fashion. They made 1.64 billion euros in 2023, and in 2024 they made 1.71 billion euros, which is not a big jump. The falls of Gucci and Saint Laurent alone are way more than the jump of Bottega. So yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, clearly. They've obviously laid out a plan and a strategy for how exactly they are going to achieve these things moving forward. And I think we just have to wait and see about kind of what their plans are moving forward. I think it's going to be interesting, especially with the Balenciaga fragrances. I'm looking forward to that and seeing how they roll that out. But they really need to market these things properly, especially with the fragrances, because that rollout, like, guys, outside of us people in fashion, do you hear anyone talking about the Bottega fragrances? I just don't hear anyone talking about it. It's almost like it didn't launch. Like, there's no real buzz around it. No one really speaks about it. It's really odd. Really odd. So yeah, anyway, that is the Kering report, guys. I just wanted to report on that because it came out today, actually. So it's really good to kind of discuss those things.